right, let's jump into Wells Fargo. You have yet to speak publicly about Wells Fargo until today. Wells Fargo has admitted to creating some 2 million fake accounts over at least 5 years. This is a scandal that cost the CEO his job. It cost 5,300 hourly employees, workers, their livelihood and their jobs. Berkshire is the largest shareholder in Wells Fargo, owning just about 10% of the bank. You personally own about 2 million shares. You have been such a supporter of this bank, Warren, that back in 2009, you said, if I had to put all of my net worth in a stock, that would be the stock. How do you feel about Wells Fargo?
It might well be the stock now, actually.
Today.
I'm not touting the stock or anything. It depends on the price of that stock versus other stocks. But it's interesting. I don't think anybody's actually picked up on this, but we own 500 million shares at Berkshire Hathaway, and then there's a few shares more that get counted against us. You can't go over 10% of the shares of a bank without becoming a bank holding company, unless you agree to be totally passive, and the Federal Reserve Board has to pass on that.
Right, which you've applied for.
Well, what happened, of course, was that Wells, we didn't buy over 10%. Wells repurchased shares, which threw us over 10%. We don't want to be a bank holding company, and we filed in June to declare our intent, which we have always had, to be passive, and they still have to rule on that, and then maybe a few more months. In my view, they rule it because we are passive, but that means passive. It means you don't. It was reported I talked directly to the board. I can't talk directly to the board. That is not being passive. And the Federal Reserve would say at that point, you are going to be a bank holding company. We do not want to be a bank holding company.
So I'm clear. Have you personally or Berkshire sold any of your stake in Wells Fargo since this scandal?
No.
None?
No, and I didn't want to.
Why?
Well, it's a great bank that made a terrible mistake, and every great institution makes. If you employ 360,000 people like we do, or 280,000 like they do, but they made a particularly egregious mistake.
I mean, this was part of the culture. It was pervasive, and it lasted for years.
It was a dumb incentive system, which when they found out it was dumb, they didn't do anything about it. If you put in incentives have terrific power, and they got power to do good things and bad things, and everybody uses incentives. You're going to use them with your children. People use them. I mean, there's nothing wrong with incentives, but if you find out incentives is producing perverse behavior to what you intended, you got to change it. It's not unknown to misgauge the effect of incentives, and Wells Fargo designed a system that produced bad behavior. Now that when you find that out, you got to do something about it. And the big mistake was they didn't do something about it.
And behavior that has really hurt the bank's reputation.
No, it hurts the bank's reputation.
And standing. So that brings me back to 1991, the Salomon Brothers scandal. You testify in front of Congress and you say, lose money for the firm, I will be understanding, lose a shred of reputation for the firm, and I will be ruthless. Wells Fargo did just that, and you're sticking with them. Why?
Well, there's no question of sticking with them. I mean, being ruthless. I'm a passive investor in Wells Fargo. I will guarantee you, we've got, I don't know how many, 30 companies we own stock in or something like that. I will guarantee you there's something going wrong at almost every one of them. I mean, it's not my job to run those companies. And it is my job to determine when something goes wrong, whether it's going to be permanent. But I was on the board of directors of Salomon when they...
Sure.
Yeah.
So to those who have said, why didn't you come out and speak publicly sooner, in the midst of the scandal?
Probably it can't be done. At that point, I violated what I told the Federal Reserve. We said we would be a passive investor.
Okay, so you couldn't say anything.
No, I'm not saying I would have said something, but absolutely, we had told the Federal Reserve in June we would be a passive investor.
The CEO, John Stumpf, someone you've known well over the years,
a very
well.
decent man.
Do you feel misled by him?
I don't feel misled. I feel he made a hell of a mistake, and he didn't correct it. I mean, that's the thing. It's somewhat similar. I don't want to make it too parallel. John Goodfriend didn't commit the act at Salomon that caused the problem, but he sucked his thumb, when he learned about it, and then it mushroomed, as problems do, out of control. And then, being behind the curve, he didn't know what to do exactly. I don't know what happened precisely at Wells Fargo at all, but the problem was not doing something about it. We have a hotline at Berkshire, and thousands of things come in. Somebody says the guy next to me has bad breath or something like that, but it goes to like other places, it goes to the internal audit, and I want to know about any that sound like they've got real validity about something significant, and the person in charge of internal audit would do that. Now, I'm sure that there were signals way back.
There were whistleblowers. CNN Money has reported that have called and nothing happened.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. That's the problem. When there's a problem, I have this formula. It's get it right, get it passed, get it out, get it over, and you've got to do all. You got to get it right first, but then you got to do it fast.
Did you speak with the CEO, John Stumpf, once this scandal broke? And if so, what did you say to him, and what did he say to you?
I talked to him on the announcement was on a Thursday, and I have no idea what the date was. And then I watched him on Jim Cramer on CNBC, and I thought he did not get the gravity of what he was involved in based on talking. So the next morning, I called him, and I just basically said, I don't think you've gotten the gravity of the situation. I've seen that before and other things. John Goodfriend didn't. John Goodfriend thought what happened to Salmi actually said this was a traffic ticket.
Did you tell John Stumpf you thought he had to go?
No.
What did he say to you?
I just said, I think, I don't know the exact words, but I said, I don't think you understand the gravity of this. I said I watched him on Cramer the day before.
Did you have any inclination of this? When did you first become aware?
Incidentally, it would not be up to me to say that he should go with us being a passive investor.
When did you first become aware of the fake account scandal?
Well, when I read it.
In the public?
I was the Thursday.
Became aware. How would you rate Wells Fargo's initial response?
Slow.
Slow. Senator Elizabeth Warren called it gutless leadership, and some have said they put the blame far too much on lower-level employees. Did they?
I mean, who knows all the statements they made. I mean, the important thing when you have a problem is get it right, get it fast, get it out, get it over.
So the
and when it's it's the responsibility of the CEO.
So Tim Sloan, now the CEO, a 29-year veteran of the bank, is he the person to do that, or does Wells need outside leadership?
No, I think Tim Sloan's exactly right. I've met him shortly after he took over. He came to Omaha. It his initiative, totally his initiative, and we had lunch.
Obviously he asked your advice. How do you right the ship?
Yeah, he told me what was going on.
How do you get their reputation back? What would your advice be on that front?
You start from where you are and you work forward, and you've got trust to rebuild, and you've got an incredible institution. I mean, in terms of the impact on business, it's minor. I mean, they weren't making any money off the program; they were losing money. So it isn't like something they were doing that was hugely profitable or anything of the sort. But in terms of the people that are there, in terms of outside public, it takes time to restore trust.
Wells Fargo's new account openings have plunged. The stock price has fallen to a 2.5-year low. The SEC is now investigating the Department of Justice, various congressional committees, some states' attorneys general. Do you have faith in Wells Fargo, the institution?
Oh, sure. We do loads of business with Wells Fargo. We have billions of dollars with them. I don't know anything about it, but if I had to guess as whether the deposits would be up a year from now, I guess they'd be up.
Culture has always been something, Warren, that is so important to you.
Huge.
It's huge. It actually, it is at the core of
it's huge.
Why you buy businesses, the culture of the business from the top down.
And changing them is tough.
Was there a flawed culture within the bank?
Well, the very act of not correcting the problem affected the culture. My guess is that the culture, everything I know about it, and I don't claim intimate knowledge, the culture was pretty good, and the incentive system corrupted people. If you leave the petty cash of a large company, right near the door where people leave every day, and just have the petty cash there, you don't bother to buy a safe or anything of the sort, you are going to some people are going to succumb to that otherwise would behave pretty well. And when people see other people succumbing to it, they will do it. Cultures shift, and you can affect that culture. You can't affect it in a hurry, but you can turn it for the better or for the worse by your own actions. That's why they put in cash registers. That's how John Patterson sold cash registers. He said, you know, if you've got a cash drawer as opposed to my national cash register, you're going to make people behave worse than they would if you know, if you had the proper safeguards.
Let's talk about the amount of money that John Stumpf has left with. He's left Wells with a $130 million package. He did have $41 million of that compensation clawed back. Is that right?
You can judge whether anybody that runs a business, whether it's right, the amount that they get voted, but the shareholders and the directors put, you know, they have a proxy statement that thick, and if he's earned it, there's probably part of a contract that describes the conditions under which.
Sure.
Yeah. You know.
So outside of the contract, because before in the past you've talked about, you know, what some would deem as excessive compensation packages, and you've said, if I were the American shareholder, I'd get a little bit irritated with these goodbye kisses. Those are your words.
Yeah, I still am, but not. I'm not. That's not in any way related to John Stumpf.
No.
I mean, the pay packages of American CEOs have taken very good care of themselves.
5,300 employees don't have a job at Wells Fargo anymore. So for them to see John Stumpf leaving with that amount of money, it's hard to stomach.
Well, I mean, that's been repeated time after time after time in American business. I mean, you looked at thousands of banks, at least hundreds of banks will say that have failed. You know, did they have clawbacks on any of those?
What do you think the lesson is? Certainly a big, huge lesson learned when you came in to help right the ship at Solomon, you know, back in 91. What's going to be the lesson learned here,
the lesson,
do you think, for the sector?
The lesson is anytime you get any indication that any policy is leading to bad behavior, get on it quickly. And just any problem, you know, when you attack it early. You know, my partner Charlie says, an ounce of prevention isn't worth a pound of cure. He says an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. And you know, you'll make mistakes. And the question is, you know, do those mistakes fester and become a cancer on the organization or anything of the sort? But you better learn to deal with mistakes in business because you're going to make them. You know, I made a lot of them, and that's part of the job is not just, you know, taking the kudos. Part of your job is learning to deal with mistakes, and frequently they can be mistakes of people under you made, but they are under you, and when you find out about them, you've got to do something about it.